I'm speechless. I'm speechless. College students don't know how to read. What is the world coming to? What have we? I'm shocked, horrified, shocked. I'm sh- you. People don't know how to read now. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. We need to test this with a little reading exercise tonight. I'm sure you're ready for the test. Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. They can't read. They can't. How will they know the scriptures if they? Oh wait, that's not what we're talking about. I, I,
That's a quite an opening.
I, I'm sure you've all heard because it went round the internet thanks to the cat. I mean, we all chased the laser kitten of the kitten on Substack. Even Vox Day came up with a quote on this, and it's like, and I of course, because can I read? I don't know. We're going to find out. But headline, gripping headlines. They don't read very well. A study of the reading comprehension skills of English majors at two Midwestern universities. Oh my gosh, we're in shame world now.
Yeah, flyover country, right? No,
Flyover
those
country.
people are
Okay, so guys, I
very
know it's like
Dickensian.
just horrible, horrible, horrible. They can't read. We already have a comment in the chat saying, "Oh, they can't navigating patterns. Welcome. Oh, they can read. They cannot comprehend. Too much literacy, not enough comprehension. Oh, well, the
Mm.
scriptures is larger issues. Well, yes, indeed, but they can't read, and everyone's horrified. I'm horrified. Aren't you horrified?
I don't believe it.
Which you don't
And so
believe they
for
can't read or you don't believe?
well, yeah, I think you pointed this out before. It's very highfalutin of them, right? To sneer at the students that they were supposed to be teaching who can't read, and it's very Dickensian. It's almost a class, almost like a class warfare sneer to it, to the article as it was written. But
Well, you've already proven yourself 1,000 times smarter than the people who did the paper.
and yet I don't have tenure anywhere.
Well, it's not clear. So I mean, if we're like I'm sorry to say they mock these poor women, and it's mainly women
Yeah.
because it's 85 undergraduate students. The test they did, the apparently this exercise it's 10 years old now, although the paper's
Hmm.
only been out a year. So I'm a little unclear about what happened here in the delay. Right? Did they wait to publish until after the women had grown up and couldn't be shamed anymore? I don't know. This was very strange, right? It's like so,
Yeah. What's
yeah.
the point of it? It's 10 years after the fact. Did they come up and say, we need to do something? We need to change the curriculum. We need to make it more vigorous. And so that their
10
brains
years
can be
ago.
tested.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is not in fact cutting edge news. This is decade old news. So
Mm.
apparently these English majors couldn't read 10 years ago. We're not clear that it's gotten any better since then.
I saw evidence over 20 years ago. And so 30 years
Really?
ago. Yeah,
Really? You
when I
mean
was in
people haven't been
college.
able to read
I'll tell you,
before?
I went to three different high schools because we moved around a lot,
Mm.
and they all had different curriculum requirements. And so I think you and I have discussed because we're close to the same age. we read the same authors, but not necessarily the same stories. I never read Bleak House. I read
I no,
Tale of Two
I
Cities.
so everyone
Yeah.
if you haven't read my Substack article about this, it's on Fencing Barrett Prayer, and the novel in question that we're about to do this test on is Bleak House. Carry on.
Yes. Okay. So
Casey,
just a
I
guy.
have not, I have clearly not trained Casey to set things up on stage properly yet. She always
What did I
does the
miss?
homework. She's the student in class who's done the homework and starts
It was
talking
actually
about
read.
things in the middle of the conversation.
Oops. Sorry.
Not very many people are very good at that to set things up so that people
But butting in?
we no
Me?
no 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 we did a whole stream last week on how to set it up. Apparently, it's been a problem since AD 400. But carry on.
Okay. There were big differences in the abilities of students I saw just from random people I sat next to in my history classes when they had to write an essay. And I looked over and it's like, you've got to be kidding me. Seriously, it was fourth grade level. I felt bad for the guy. I didn't shame him or say anything about it, but I noticed it, you know. It just really depends on
Wait a
where you went to
minute.
school.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. So you're talking about school in the 70s?
No, this would be 1990.
Oh, but in
I was in
college. You were in
college and I
college.
looked
Okay.
over
Okay. No. So
at the
I was
essay.
thinking the last time I read Dickens was in
Yeah.
maybe high school. Yes.
No,
Yes.
no,
So
this wasn't Dickens. I was just talking about different
just
levels of being able to write and reading comprehension. That I noticed that there were that people of the same age and the same year in school had vastly different skills depending upon where they went to school, went to high school, right? Because this was a college setting, so we came from all different
right.
high schools in all different areas of the country and sometimes the world, right?
And
Um,
some people were better at it than others.
Way better,
I'm
right? Some people were
shocked.
were considered to be advanced. I mean, I was not advanced. This
I'm
was
absolutely
remedial.
shocked that some people are smarter than
Yeah.
others.
Yeah, they changed something in English. They changed. I'm ignoring that. She knows she's smarter than me. Anyway,
No, not than you. Then, oh, by the way, I tested pretty much everybody else, right? So my
yeah.
first thought is, I mean, excuse me, I seriously, oh my gosh, get a grip. I can't say it. Y'all are stupid. All of you. You're all dumb. Oh God, I just did it. I did the thing. I did the thing. I'm not supposed to do the thing.
Are you like that? You're like that professor in Third Rock from the Sun, the physics professor.
What? I
The
don't know
physics
that. I
professor.
haven't seen it.
Oh, you missed. Okay, you're gonna binge
No,
later.
but
We'll
what I
talk
do
later.
know, see, I didn't grow up in Kansas, so I haven't encountered this sort of reading exercise. But I do remember growing up in flyover country for the most part, and
Hmm?
being smarter than I don't know every single other person in the class based on my I don't know graduating first in my class in high school. I think I get to gloat. All
You can
right,
go a little bit.
and it's so yeah, so what okay guys, if you haven't caught up with my mocking yet, yeah, navigating patterns, wait, people aren't equal, I guess so. Okay, but we can educate everybody to be equal. You're getting the problem, right? We must be able to manifest the the perfect world through propositions. You're jumping ahead. So yes, there's certain claims here of when we are old enough to know that this is not a new problem. I mean,
Yeah.
some people are saying, I've got it. The thing is, I'm trying to like ease everybody into the question here rather than just telling my conclusion, which of course was what I did in the Substack. And not one person reading my Substack has proven that they got the point that I was trying to make. Not one, which means every single person,
You
2,000
failed.
of them or so, who's read my Substack can't read. Wait. Oh, thank you for reading my Substack. And Vox shared it, and he actually, I mean, no, there is one person who got my point very quickly, and happily she has her own podcast, so she could talk about it. That the hysteria here is the first thing to be nervous about, right? This claim, it's like, oh my gosh, they can't read, right? Okay, you can do that literally with every educational system ever. It's
Yeah.
always failing, always. From the beginning, because it just is. I can give you
It's just
examples from Dickens' time when nobody could read. So
when nobody
apparently,
could read.
apparently,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, oh, people back in the day, back in Victorian England, could all read. And it's like not according to, I don't know, the surveys that Ingalls reported in his Conditions of the Working Class in England that were made with surveys of children from Sunday schools who are apparently the factory worker kids who didn't, couldn't tell the Bible stories because apparently even though they've been going to school, they didn't know the characters.
You mean
So
they have the
in
same problem then
fact,
they have now? As the
back in
parents
back in
don't
the
care, the kids won't.
1840s, back in the golden age when everybody knew the Bible, nobody knew the Bible.
They probably couldn't read it, but if they were paying attention, they probably did know it.
No, they were supposed to be in Sunday school. This is there we have surveys from the 1840s, which is about the time that, Dickens is writing his novels. And one of the things that that's why holding up the Bible to start with was appropriate.
Oh, so we're going to hit us over the head with it?
No. Is why do you want to read, right? First step, who wants who to read, why? And therefore, what are you testing for to decide whether or not you can read?
Are you testing for comprehension, speed?
Well, sort of what, but why would you, why does it matter so much that people can read?
Today or in the 19th century?
Well, I thought literacy was just a sort of abstract skill that everybody should be expert at, that we can then test for and tell whether or not people can do it.
Well, it's related to the Bible, right? Everybody had to learn how to read so they could read the Bible.
Well, why? The priest can talk to you.
What priests? They got rid of those. Come on.
Step one. No, but
Yeah.
well, okay, no, that's fair. Okay, let's do better than we did with Augustine last week in my
Okay.
fumbling around and everything. Okay, so let me see if I can make this clearer for the slow in the back. Oh, right, everybody. No, I can't. I did it again. I've been working really hard this week on a paper that I'm going to be giving about St. Francis. St. Francis could barely read. That's pretty clear, right? I mean,
Really?
well, why would he be able to? He's in 12th
Because he
century.
was wealthy.
Well, yeah. I mean, he wasn't trained as a monk.
No, he wasn't trained as a monk, but he would have been trained as a businessman because his father wanted, I'm sure his father educated him. He was upper middle class.
Well, maybe, but I mean, we don't have any. What we have are a few samples of Francis's writing in Latin, and it's apparently not very fluid, right? So he couldn't write.
He wasn't a good student. He was a partier. I mean, that was
He's definitely a partier.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So he was one of those students that he did as much as he needed to get by.
Well,
he
probably only had the elementary education, which was basically learning to read some Latin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's
some mathematics because you've got to count the money.
Probably, but
yeah.
Oh, you're distracting me again. Let me reset.
Sorry. I'll be quiet.
No, not be quiet. The thing is, I'm trying. Okay, so the problem is the same one we had last week. Trying to set all this up properly so that you can get to the point where anything makes sense, right? And the exercise. Let me figure out where to start here. Okay, the premise on the internet is, this study that was done. Let me just explain the study. This paper, it was published in 2004 by three professors, the two English teaching professors and the mathematics teacher that helped them. It's in CEA Critic, Volume 86, Number 1, March 2024, and the authors are Susan Carlson, Ananda Jayawardena, and Diane Minial. And the premise was they'd done a test, a coded test of 85 English majors to see whether or not, given a text cold, I think that was the idea, right? Given a text cold, the students could make sense of it. And the text that they chose, Susan Carlson, I looked her up. She teaches in Pittsburgh. Is a scholar of Victorian literature, right? So that they chose Dickens seems to me to be that they expect to be teaching. They expect their students, the students that they tested, but these weren't their own students. These were somebody else's students, allegedly drawn from the regular public school system in Kansas and from two different Kansas universities. So neither the professors weren't at the school where the students were tested, and the students being tested had never had these people as their own teachers,
Okay.
right? So it's meant to be this kind of scientific, you know, um, evaluation of whether or not the students, and most 2/3 of them were women. So if we say most of these students are women, it's women shaming other women to start with. Um,
Yeah.
see, I can't even keep at the level that I want to on this, as saying, you guys, this was fundamentally flawed on so many levels. I don't even know where to start. It's so frustrating.
Mm.
Um, they gave the students this test. They had other students prompting the reading, and they recorded the readings, and then they coded them as they sat and listened through all of these 2-hour long readings of this particular text and decided on the basis of their different coding levels whether or not the students could read.
How do they know what were they judging on? Pronunciation, enunciation?
No, they were mainly reading comprehension things, so it was
So they had to ask
um,
them questions about what they just read.
yeah, they're basically doing it off the recordings of what the students said out loud as they were reading, and the facilitator would ask them questions. But the
Okay.
facilitators were other students. Some of them were
Hmm.
graduate students, and um, the students, unprompted as readers, were meant to explain what they were reading. Right. So the level of comprehension here is, can you read a text and then explain it to somebody else what you're
Okay.
reading? Which I hadn't that was the kind of exercise it was. So it's, can you take a text, read it, and explain it to somebody else in such a way that, I don't know, there wasn't any point to it, right? It's just the reading, whether or not they can it's basically an exercise in whether they can paraphrase and identify stuff. And
But they're reading just certain excerpts of it, not the entire book.
well, they're reading the opening of the book, right?
Yeah, because
But
you
but
get context as you go along.
Well, so we're already giving more context to this whole exercise than it sounds like any of the people giving the exercise were, right? Which is
Mm.
the primary problem to start with. And then the problem that we proved last week is, where you start, it matters enormously, right? How you frame this exercise so that you know what you're doing and based on what the paper says, Carlson and Miniel explained they did in the paper. I don't think they gave the students any instruction on what they were looking at.
Hmm.
It doesn't sound like they did, right? It's like, here's a text. I want you to read it
Well,
and comment on it as you're reading about what it's about, right?
yeah,
So,
you can't do
like,
that. You can't. Dickens was writing for about English places and people to English people who would understand what those places and people were.
well, to
And if
start
you
with,
don't get
there's a
that,
context, right? It's
yes,
like,
that's the
I'm
context.
not even sure what they were given in some. It's like, were they given? So I printed out the text that we're going to practice reading, right?
Yeah,
But were they given a book? And like, I don't have a copy of Bleak House because I've never read the story. So what I
me
get
either.
out of this reading, what I get cold out of this text is going to be, what I get, right? But I already know more than it sounds like they told the students. So, like, everything that reading comprehension is a framing problem, right? What is this? What am I looking at? How do I think about it? If you hand me, well, if you hand me this, I actually have one idea. But if you hand me a novel, you've got all sorts of clues about how it's framed from the fact of the book, right?
Itself, yeah.
It's
You have to
fat,
read through
right?
it.
It's like, I think Bleak House is fat, so it's a big fat book. So here you've been given 7 paragraphs of a big fat book. That's a clue already, right? I don't even. It's like, based on. I'm trying to not be completely rude and sniffy about how stupid this exercise was altogether, but this is an insulting exercise to insult the kids in Kansas with. Get a grip,
Mm,
right? And
yeah.
I'm really mad at the entire internet that went around, gleefully laughing at the fact that these professors had coded this exercise and proved these girls couldn't read. Oh my gosh, they're going to be English majors and be your student
The only
teacher,
thing they,
be
the
your
only thing they
teachers, and
proved is
now
they.
and now 10 years later they're probably in classrooms and they can't even understand the book they were supposed to have read.
Because nobody taught it to them. So they should have been. It should have been an exercise of the conclusion and saying, "Oh, how come you're not teaching students properly?" because you can't, and they didn't do it by giving them 7 paragraphs out of what was it, a 21 piece periodical that was
It's a
eventually
900-page
compressed into a
book.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which the thing is, if they gave them the book and said, here, start reading, right? Which it doesn't
Hmm.
sound like any of the students that they recorded, the stuff that they said, right? Okay, so the text opens, London, Michaelmas, term lately over, and the Lord Chancellor sitting in Lincoln's Inn Hall, and the person reading it, they've transcribed out some of the responses. And I don't know exactly what Lord Chancellor is, some person of authority, so that's probably what I would go with. Sitting in Lincoln's Inn Hall, which would be like maybe a hotel or something. I mean, that's not a bad guess. Inn, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Michaelmas term is the first academic term of the year, so Lincoln's Inn Hall is probably not a hotel. Laughs. 16 seconds of breathing, chair creaking. Then she whispers, I'm just going to skip that. Okay, now if you had been given a book with a cover picture on it, with Charles Dickens on the label and Bleak House, and like this isn't even the opening of the book, right? The book starts with um, a preface. A chancery judge once had the kindness to inform me, as one of a company of some 150 men and women not laboring under any suspicions of lunacy, that the court of chancery, though the shining subject of much popular prejudice, at which point I thought the judge's eye had a cast in my direction, was almost immaculate. There had been, he admitted, a trivial blemish or so in its rate of progress, but this was exaggerated and been entirely owing to the parsimony of the public, which guilty public, it appeared, had been until lately bent in the most determined manner on by no means enlarging the number of chancery judges appointed. I believe by Richard II, but any other king will do as well. That would frame it completely differently, right? It's like, oh, we're talking
Yeah.
about judges, right?
I'm talking about a court
We're
case.
talking about a
Yeah.
court case. If they'd actually given them the book instead of
Mhm.
7 paragraphs, no context, the
Yeah, it was
students
an
would have had
ambush.
something to work with.
Yeah, it was a total ambush.
It
Well, I
was
mean,
just total ambush. So what have
I've
you proved?
studied.
You've managed to prove that students giving a text with no context around it struggle.
Correct. Now, I studied a lot of English literature in high school. I had good teachers. I was lucky. In Maryland public schools, I had very good English teachers. And then I went to the University of Maryland and I had excellent English professors. And they would never throw 7 paragraphs at you and say, okay, tell me what it says. They know we
Right.
don't understand any of the context. They have to teach us a little bit about the history, a little bit about the culture. What time was it? Right? How did people act? Why would they act like that? Because they actually wanted us to understand what we were reading. You have to be taught to be able to understand what you're reading. You can't just read it cold and go, oh, yeah, I totally get it because I'm so smart. No,
Well, you have
it's
to
nothing to
be
do with
not even
smart.
not so I have not read this novel before, right? So anything I get
Mm-hmm.
from it
Me
was
either.
totally cold, right? Neither of us have. But what we do know and what you just it's not so much that you've been taught to read this text, which is some
Right.
of what I think people are responding to. It's like, well, how much Victorian history do you know? Right?
Yeah.
That it's have you been taught to ask these questions when you are given something to read?
Right.
Right? Ask the
Right.
questions of frame it, figure out what you're looking at. This is absolutely everything. It's like, so what, if you don't know what something is, this is how people keep getting caught with, um, the journalists or anything online. It's like, oh, spoof, forgery, psych, blah, 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 ha, 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 I tricked you,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah. It
people
doesn't
don't
feel like
know the
that.
context that stuff is coming at them in. And so they don't know how to frame it. Is this a news report or is this a novel? Is this a
Right.
history book or is this what is it, right? And if they based it's hard to tell from this, but based on the students' responses, they didn't know what an inn was, Lincoln's Inn, right? Lincoln's Inn Hall, whatever. If they'd been given the whole book, they would have had more clue already about what they were
Right. They
looking
would.
at.
Right. They would have just got it just throughout reading the book. They would have got the context and they would have remembered. Oh, okay, that's what they were talking about
Right.
in the beginning. Right. Because he was a good writer. He didn't spell everything out for you on every single sentence. That would be very tedious to read. He actually read stories people wanted to read. They were exciting. They would allow the reader to discover things.
Well, so this is, the thing, the meta thing that everybody is freaking out about is this sense that sitting down and reading a novel is not a pastime that people enjoy as much anymore.
Because
Because,
they've trained their brains to read in short bites, but they can be trained the other way too.
well,
You just have
so
to give them something interesting to do it with.
right at this level, I think, would you? I'm going to use my Bible as the example. Would you sit down and read this cover to cover like a novel?
No.
You'd be insane to try. Please stop doing it. Right?
It's a library. It's a collection of books.
Well, you have to know how to read it. You have
Yeah.
to know what kind of reading this is going to be. Never mind the level of, I mean, there's differences between reading on paper versus reading on screen, and I have some thoughts about that too. But reading the scroll versus reading the codex. But
It's like
the basic level of, oh, look, it's a codex. What my job is to sit down, start at the beginning, right? And so start at the beginning. Preface to the 1899 edition, right? Okay,
yeah.
maybe not that. Book of Genesis, right? Blah 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 blah. That, you don't. Some people do sit down and try to read the Bible as a novel, but it's not a novel. It's a different kind of exercise. So even at that level, right? Just because it's bound like this doesn't mean you sit down and read it like the same kind of book.
I do recommend you don't start with Revelation, no matter what you do. If you've never read the Bible before.
You can't read the Bible. You have it's a prop for a particular kind of practice. Whereas novels are a specific kind of storytelling that fits in a particular kind of publishing context, which fits in a particular kind of, not just media environment, but social environment. Women read lots of novels in the 19th century.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people
Certain
complained
novels
about
they
it. They
still
thought
do.
all those novels were rotting their brains. Yes,
Oh,
they did indeed.
yeah, they were ruining women. In fact, Dante pointed that out, didn't he? In one of his circles of hell. Didn't the adulterers blame that on the
They were
book?
reading chivalric romances, but no, the
Right.
actually just head down in a book. Why do we think head down in a book is a good pastime? There was a great oh, we've lost the chat. They've all gone away. We've got
Oh,
Fat and Mel are still there. Uh, oh, Fat, you're jumping ahead. Or the daydreamer. That's easy. People need to read so they can vote and do taxes. Well, shh. Okay. Um, Mel, I feel like hearing a passage read aloud is easier to understand and random out of context paragraph from standardized text. Well, yes. I mean, the random out of context passages from standardized text. It's like I can read about medieval history in almost any language I know the alphabet for, even when I don't know the language, because I kind of know what it's supposed to say.
oh,
And I've been proving this myself this week, reading German and Italian all week, right? And I was like, I really can't. If you give me a novel in German, I cannot read it. If you give me an academic article in German, I can, because I
hmm.
have so much context for what it's saying. I can make a lot of educated guesses on even words I've forgotten what were.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas if I'm reading something like newspapers are often very difficult to read if you're not in the language, because they're compressed and contextualized differently. The daydreamer, they were allowed to look up anything they wanted on their phones, though they could have Googled the first sentence and found the book reading is from. We think head down in a book is good because the people with their heads down in books took over the world. Well, they didn't really, not those women.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's what's funny about it. Reading novels was not considered highbrow in the 19th
Right.
century.
Right. In the 20th century, we still call them like pulp fiction or dime novels. Right.
Right.
And it's considered just a cheap pastime.
It's a cheap pastime. I mean, the irony of it for me that these women who teach Victorian literature think it's a highbrow problem for people not to read novels.
Yeah, this is a serial. I love that picture you posted of you could buy it. I looked up the price. It's like $18,000 to buy an original,
Well, because
something crazy like that.
it was originally ephemera. They originally
Right.
published it in magazine form
Right.
monthly, and
So
those
you've got
don't
this,
survive because once they bound it
uh,
all together and published the omnibus, people read
yeah,
that. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah. So basically you're reading Pulp Fiction from the 19th century.
yes.
Serial Pulp
and
Fiction, that's a
and
romance novel.
you're reading, so if you told
Twilight. Yeah.
you're reading Twilight, you're reading 50
Yeah.
Shades of Grey, you're reading, and you're just like, oh no, Dickens is a better writer. Well, yes, but it's the same
The
level of
subject
stuff.
matter was better.
The 19th century novel has a particular role of social criticism. I agree, right? And
Yes.
these novels are important because of the style that they were written in, of
And Dickens did do that on purpose. That wasn't an accident. He wasn't just making passing observations. He was hoping to actually influence the public with his writings.
right. So it's like The Sopranos or The Wire or something, right? And so you know
Mhm.
you've sat down to watch the entire binge watch the entire show rather than getting it in installments. I mean,
Yeah.
now we just binge watch everything because that's how it drops. But back when things were airing once a week or so, right, that would be more like the Dickensian sort of. You have to develop it and let it, because you're only going to get to read one a month, right? You
Yes.
have time to
This.
to work through these particular passages.
I'm laughing at my old age now, my big old age, because that's how television used to be, kids. You would have to wait 6 months sometimes for the next installment of your show.
Yeah. So you don't,
Yeah,
these were, you're not going to want to read it fast, right? You're not. I think maybe that's the big. We scroll and we expect to be able to speed read everything.
yeah.
These
Well, you can. I
these are
can't.
texts that are written to be read slowly, which we're going to do eventually if we keep
And probably read aloud,
cliffhanging you,
right?
and probably read aloud. Yes, I mean, you would read. I mean, certainly a lot of it was a common practice for working people to have someone reading while they were working. It was like audiobooks.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah, so if you're listening to an audiobook now version of things, you're actually in a good tradition of the way these stories work.
Hmm.
So reading comprehension involves understanding that things come in a context and things out of context don't make any sense because things need a context in order to make sense at all. Lesson one.
And
Context.
yeah,
Go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go ahead. I was interrupting again.
No, we're both riled up tonight.
No, well, yeah. Anyway, yeah. No, what Mel is saying, it's much easier for her to hear it, and I do think this was it was kind of like sheet music was published to be played at parties, and both these novels were published to be read out loud to people who were listening. It was like before radio, and then people would gather around the radio. Before television, they would gather around the television. And now it's very unusual for us to all be kind of separated from each other, reading our phones like this alone. And sometimes we'll share what we're reading, but it was nothing like these novels that came out. I have a dear friend who hates what I love. I absolutely love Shakespeare. I grew up watching BBC specials of Shakespeare, of productions of Shakespeare and Dickens. And that helped me a great deal in understanding it. It does help a great deal. These were meant to be read out loud. A lot of
Yes.
the Shakespeare plays, definitely, because it's not just context you're giving when you read the entire thing instead of 7 random paragraphs that these professors picked out to ambush the students with. Um, it's an inflection in the voice, right?
Yes.
When you're reading it correctly, you go, oh, that's what they meant, right? You have to put the emphasis on the right syllable, or you're just not going to get it,
Yes.
right?
Yes. That these are scripts. These are a kind of script. This is the same point about the Bible, that that they're books that are used liturgically. They're books that are used practically, and if you try to read them out of that context, they don't make any sense. We've talked a lot about that in the Mosaic Ark, right? It's like you need the frame of the story to know what you're reading within, and even with Dickens, you need the frame of the practice that these books were published into, and they're being given. So being given here, read this out of context, and we're going to code how many things you recognize, and how
Yeah,
well you can figure out what you know and you don't know, and can you look up words and things like that. And
that has a very mean girl tint to it.
well, I
It's
frankly,
like,
this is where I'm coming from. It's like, guys, I grew up in, you've heard my story lots of times, right? I started school in Nebraska, off the Air Force Base where my dad was stationed. So I was, in kindergarten and first grade in Bellevue, Nebraska. Then we moved to Albuquerque for a year, and I was put up a grade because guess what? I was already reading at a level higher than the kids in my class. Oh,
happened to
goody.
me too.
What a
Yeah,
surprise. Shocked, right?
right, because you move from school to school and they're behind a year and you're ahead a year. So they have to move you ahead, or well, at least they did back then. Now they don't, and the students suffer for it, but that's a different topic. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the kids in the playground in Albuquerque all told me I was going to fail. Right? So there at 7,
Oh,
6 or 7,
I had a
6.
teacher. I can top that. I had a teacher put me in special class because she told my mother she doesn't know how to read. We had just come back to this country, and it was in second, no, it was first grade, second grade. And my mother said, "That's ridiculous. She reads to me every night." Oh, she's just memorized those. So they put me in the special class,
Oh,
right?
see, they didn't even
And
believe
so
you could read. Yeah.
nope,
What kind of test is
because
that?
I was quiet. I was very shy. She would call me. I wouldn't talk. Oh, she can't read, right? Because we're smart. We took psychology classes as part of our education, degree. We know she can't read. I read two languages, people, at the age of 6. I read in two languages because that's what I was taught. So I blew through their 2-week curriculum in an hour. And the special ed teacher called my mother very upset and said, "What is she doing in my class?" You know, just I know. So they wouldn't believe me. So anyway, that was my foray. That was my
Yes.
foray into
So we're the
SPED
we're the
for an
we're the
afternoon.
brainy, irritating girls who could read all along, right? I mean, no, seriously, do you remember learning to read? Do you actually have any memory of
No,
learning to?
I have
No.
no memory. I have memory of learning how to write. I have no memories of learning how to read.
I have some memory of I remember exercises in kindergarten
Hmm.
of the letter, making the letters and such. I have zero.
And the German words were really long.
Yeah. But
Long,
yes,
took
it's
half a
like
page.
this is the interesting thing. If you actually become a reader, you've learned it young enough, you don't remember doing it, right?
Yeah, I
It's
don't.
just you just
And my
can do it.
parents read to me. Yeah.
And right, and you learn from hearing, right? And
Hmm.
being okay. So and then we go from New Mexico that one year to Louisville. Okay, I'm making the point that I did not grow up in, some private school context. For real. I was in the public schools, and when we moved to Louisville, for some reason they were worried that I was younger, and so instead of putting me in the advanced classes, they put me in the regular classes. Okie dokie. I always
That
resented
didn't
that
work
because my
out.
siblings got to be in the advanced classes, from
Oh,
the get go, and I'm like, okay, fine. They finally put me in the. They finally, after I spent. Okay, this also means I've been hanging out until I was in 6th grade with the kids who weren't as strong as I was in academic subjects, who spent all of their time calling me the brain, and I had to be asking for extra books because I kept finishing the stuff that they assigned.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, gosh.
And then we get to, let's see, finally in advanced classes in 7th grade. And yes, and then we move after I'm in 9th grade. I shoot to the top of the class again, right? It kept happening. Okay, so
Just the surprise of everyone except you. You're like, could you please catch up, please?
well, no, this is to be fair to myself, right? The reality of it was I didn't understand that they didn't get it, right? I just
Yeah. Oh, right.
right. I'm just reading. What's the big deal, right? And and it was painful being teased for having a good vocabulary because I enjoyed words, right?
Yeah.
There is a psych point in here somewhere. Um, I despise people who shame other people for not being smart
Yeah.
so much. I cannot tell you, right? It's like, excuse me, you don't get to do that. I didn't. It's like, one, I kind of learned not. It's like if you don't have any friends, you need just to tone it down a little bit. But two, maybe it's like, how do I think about this? I just liked reading, right? And it was
Hmm.
painful being teased for liking reading. I had to have the one fight I had, my one actual real fight I ever had in my life, was I was in a tree reading. This was in Louis
Well, that's a nice picture, isn't it, everybody?
until the
That's
bullies
cute.
came along and wanted to pull me down out of the tree and beat me up for reading. So I
Oh.
climbed down out of the tree, beat them up, and went back up. No, it's true.
And then she became a fencer.
In the long run, yes. Right. So excuse me, but the sort of the role of, can you read or not, and reading comprehension and stuff like that. It's I think on the whole, people how to say, if you encounter someone who can't read as well as you do, that's on you, right? It's
Mm,
now your responsibility to help them.
yeah.
I am a
Yeah.
teacher. Did you guys notice? And so the sort of exercise that we seem to be have these people from education schools seem to have been taught about how to make sure that their students never enjoy reading, never and
Yeah.
we will say this, these were the good students in public schools in Kansas who wanted to be English teachers that you're shaming with this exercise, right? So just
Yeah.
get a grip, right? It's oh,
And
you wouldn't know
and
what
the
it's
week.
like teaching in Chicago public schools. You're right, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But that's not the context that these people are doing this exercise in.
Now the weaker ones are going to go on to bully their students,
I
right? Because they were shamed. They didn't know anything. And then some kid like you is going to come along, and rather than encourage them, if they're a weak sort of a person, they're doing to discourage them. You're causing me more work. Stop causing problems. Just, sit in quiet in the corner and do something else. And that's a pity.
well, I don't. What I am saying is like none of you can read. As far as I'm concerned, none of you guys can read. If I'm going to give you a test to figure out whether or not you know what's going on in a text, excuse me, but exactly what's the exercise here? And we will get to the I didn't ask for extra books. I just went home and read my own. I asked for extra books. They're the teachers. They're supposed to be able to give me more books, and they did. This is how one of the many avenues to become a medievalist. I'd already read Door in the Wall, and so I asked for another book, and they gave me Adam of the Road. And both of these are very important. One's about monks, and one's about um,
Oh,
troubadours.
that's cool.
I just
Yeah.
reincorporated St. Francis. Did you notice? Um,
No, I'm not smart.
well, and this no, and this is
I'm okay with that.
actually no. That's a fair response. It's like what counts, right? If we're playing reading comprehension games here, what counts?
Hmm.
That's that. Thank you. You are always very very good, and I say this sincerely. You're very good at pulling out the thing that I'm rabbiting on about and making the point, which is
Don't
better
even
than I
realize
can
I'm
do.
doing it.
What?
I don't even realize I'm doing it.
But you just did. And now I've
How?
forgotten. Everybody, what did she just say? It's what am I testing for, right? What
Yeah.
if I'm gonna claim that people have a certain level of reading comprehension, what am I testing for? That's the problem, and that's the
Hmm.
problem that they used in this exercise to prove that these students couldn't read. Now, I think what they were trying to do was say, oh, we need to reform our education system or something, but they didn't really say that. What they said
No.
was this, and this is what really got me. I knew what I was seeing when I read this. At this point, we must ask two obvious questions. Why is proficient prose literacy so important? Oh, wait a minute. You didn't say why it's so difficult, or maybe how is it that we need to be able to teach it? You're just saying they don't have it, and we are going to prove that it's important. Okie dokie. Why does the ability to read complex texts matter if college students can still graduate with good grades, find employment, and earn entry into graduate schools? Okay, so they're still graduating, they still get fine grades. Why does it matter to have complex reading skills?
How are they getting the good grades without complex reading skills? What are they testing on?
Well, they frame the problem as and the thing is, everybody who read this and the commentaries on it was like, yes, we need to have good reading skills because you're dumb if you don't have them.
Is that their conclusion? Because that's useless.
Yeah, I mean, although there are many graduates who probably succeed without advanced reading skills, the evidence from long-term studies reveal that lower literacy skills affect college graduates throughout their professional careers.
So it
The
inhibits their ability to make money.
the PIACC parentheses program for the assessment of adult competencies has been continually testing since 2012 what it formulates as the literacy, numeracy, and problem-solving skills of the working age population, ages 16 to 65, in over 40 countries, including the United States. Footnote, program one. Or no, parentheses, they don't they're at social science studies, they don't do footnotes. They should do footnotes. Program one. Uh, uh, The research has shown that high literacy rates in reading and math are a main indicator of professional and financial success, just like St. Francis.
Hmm.
From the PIACC results in 2014, only 12.9% of the U.S. population had a 4 or 5 literacy level, which is the level of reading proficiency needed to understand Dickens' novels and most other texts in the literary canon. U.S. Department of Education. Note. Sorry, it's hard to read this out loud because of the way it's formatted, which is telling. Okay, according to an ETS Center report, which analyzed the PIACC data, those with the highest literacy skills will make 38% more a month than other college graduates. Blink. Note to FOG 30, which I thought was hilarious. This is FOGG, page 30. FOG 30. The
Okay.
report observed that college graduates with higher levels of literacy and numeracy proficiency also had a higher likelihood of working in a CLM, college labor market, occupation. FOG 21. It does not stop here. There. Oh, please, God. A student who graduates college with below-level literacy, a 3 on a 5-point scale, risks becoming what the ETS calls the mal-employed. That is, quote, an employed college graduate who works in a job that does not require the proficiencies associated with a college degree to obtain employment in the occupation. FOG 13. The mal-employed, I can't even read this. The mal-employed were earning wages that were only 14% higher than their colleagues with high school degrees, while those employed in the CLM were making 125% more a month than high school graduates. FOG 32 to 33. Oh my gosh. Okay, so they're already making them read Dickens novels and saying if they're bad at this, they're not going to get a good money-making career.
Even if they're good, even if
I watched Jim Carrey's Mask this week. I just want to squirm out of this.
Yeah.
Seriously, you've reduced the practice of reading novels to whether or not they're going to get a 5 so that they can make more money than the 40 other countries in your database that we are at 12 point. Seriously?
And the thing is, they're not, because if you're talking about English majors, unless they're going to be teachers with like a guaranteed job trajectory,
well, no,
you get nothing with an English degree.
The professors are wanting to say their jobs are important.
Well, they certainly want to be the only ones who brag about being able to understand anything without discussing how to teach it properly. It's just going to shame people for not knowing it.
Yes, but what they're saying is our practice is important because people who study and have these language skills get more money. They can't defend their own subject.
Well, they're wrong anyway.
They can't defend their own subject except by saying, and this is
saying they make more money.
Apologies to the professors in this year, they're not alone, right? It's like this is the humanities says. You want to know why people can't read? Because the humanities for the entire 20th century has been playing this game of showing that they're important because they make money. You can make more money if you do it.
Well, here's the diabolical irony. They don't. There's a glut of humanities majors on the job market with bachelor's degrees, and there has been for 40 years.
Well, they're
not going to make more money.
According to Adam Smith, there's been a glut since the 18th century.
It wouldn't surprise me a bit, but maybe he might have been speaking about England, but not necessarily America, because people didn't start going to college en masse until after the Second World War and the GI Bill came along.
There you go. Why do we need to have everybody going to college en masse?
Because these English professors said you'll make more money, and they're lying. You won't.
Well, because the CIA needs your intelligence. No, wait, that's a different topic.
The CIA did come to my school, the humanities department, and try to recruit, and there was a small contingent of students protesting against it.
The CIA. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Mike Pence did that thing on X that I was watching this week that's saying the social studies, all the area studies majors, analysts.
Yes, your cultural attaché.
Culture as psychological warfare fodder. He used a different word.
I'm pretty sure I've met one or two people that went into that in the 1960s after getting English degrees and things like that.
Well,
Ian Fleming.
This explains the entire problem with American higher education for the entire 20th and now 21st century. It was, the raison d'être. I cannot say French. The point of
I'll help you.
You can help me.
Raison d'etre.
Very good, very good. The point
Thank
of
you.
it all was always being,
Yes.
but it's like, why do we have to be in? Why does everybody have to go to high school and sit in public school, classrooms in rows being tested? And you guys know I tested very, very high on all these little exercises, so don't worry about it. Tested in ways that can be not enumerated and tabulated and turned into statistics.
Right. Yeah, people are numbers, cogs in a machine, just like they're ready for the factory.
Oh yeah, just like they're ready for the factory. I wonder who wrote novels about that.
Dickens?
Oh, I mean,
Matter of fact,
there's layers of irony in them giving them this novel to read for this particular kind
isn't
of
there?
exercise.
Yeah, it's not just the class warfare, but yes, you're preparing students to become cogs in machines.
So that everybody sat around gasping about the statistics about how these students can't read. You're part of the problem. You believe. I mean, it got even worse. The poor kitten went viral with this and everything, made more tables, right? To show how much bad it was that these, you could, I mean, seriously, they took the reading exercise, coded it, had the mathematics professor put the coding into an Excel sheet so they could analyze it. These people are being trained for the CIA so they can.
There's only 87 people in their test group.
Well,
Anyway,
that's
go on.
normal for these kinds of exercises. There's
That's
always
very small.
all
So
of
what do you need the
psychology.
Excel spreadsheet for?
All of because they did so many codes. They did so many different codes.
Okay.
All of psychology is based on testing undergraduates. Because those are the people they can get to be the subject, the test subjects.
We were the lab rats, exactly.
Yeah, the test subjects. But the sort of the crippling problem here is not that in 2015 these students couldn't read. It's from 1945 and even before that, the whole exercise of education was turned into this thing that you could code and make statistics out of.
Yes.
Y'all got hoodwinked here with this little test that you thought that was so proof positive that nobody could do anything. You think that this is proving people can't think? Am I showing my dudgeon? Am I high in my dudgeon by now? I am so mad.
My dudgeon. I don't remember what that means.
I don't care. Who cares? Do you know my vocabulary? Are you using them big words against me, trying to make me, Miss Rachel, feel bad about myself? They canceled all it was what was it, in the 70s? They canceled all the rural television shows, right? They got rid of the Beverly Hillbillies and there were a few others, Petticoat Junction, and
I remember those. Those were until the 70s.
They all canceled that. They canceled them right in the 70s because we're not going to have any of them hillbillies on our television anymore.
I'm pretty sure.
No, it was a thing. It was an actual thing. That they canceled.
Well, the Grand Ole Opry stayed on though.
I can't break out of this accent now.
You can't do it.
I'm so mad. I can't believe you think you can come in here with your social sciences and your desire to prove that we ain't learning properly so that you can tell us that we're not going to make any money in your office jobs.
Yeah, in your office jobs, right?
Prepare to be shamed. Bleak House. Materialism is big. This is bigger than materialism. This is I mean, one, it's the the irony of it all, giving them Dickens to read, and then you're going to do this industrial coding on them to prove that they're not going to make any money.
It's industrialization of education. Yeah, that's funny. You think they understood that?
No.
Do they understand irony?
No,
I don't think
they didn't, and neither did anybody who read my Substack, because I wrote about the study, and then I said, oh, here's the, what did I say in my Substack? I said, okay, here is the passage that the students were given to read, and I copied out that paragraph that I just read.
Yeah, you rewrote it a bit. It was hilarious.
Right? And then I said, oh, sorry, I got the wrong text. And I copied out one of the paragraphs from Dickens, and I said, do you see what I just did there? And
It's very
nobody
good.
did.
Well,
Nobody
I saw it.
did.
I didn't mention it. I did see it. I thought it was funny.
Okay, good. Well, you've been training with me. You actually, you know my devilish tricks.
Well, no, it's just that I knew they were doing Bleak House, right? And then I read the first paragraph, and I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't take place in Philadelphia.
Oh, no, 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 not that. Not no. You got the. Oh, wait. How many? I've had 2.18K readings of this particular post that I'm about to share
Right
with you
on.
that I'm trying to find because I can't. Substack is so hard. I never can figure out where I could find my statistics versus. Okay, so I called it reading comprehension current year AF. Yes, that was a joke. After the flood, of course. And no, and I rewrote. I
That's not what I was thinking.
You weren't supposed to. You were supposed to think what the internet
Oh,
knows that the AF means.
you're married to a Brit too long. Your humor is very dry. But go on.
You think I might comprehend? So
A little
I
bit.
started the blog post Pittsburgh. Well, I
Yep.
rewrote the first paragraph of the passage to be right, and then I said, okay, so and I told you the story of what this test was, and I said, you think I'm kidding? It's like you're horrified. I'm horrified. Vox Day and the kitten are horrified. But what is to be done? The statistics are awful. The students are doomed. Their students are doomed. Our culture is doomed because after all, if our students can't read Bleak House, how will they ever make enough money to live? Wait, what? You think I'm kidding, don't you? But it's right there in the text. And then I read the passage, the concluding passage from the report. Oh, wait, sorry, wrong passage. Here it is in the text the students were asked to read. Do you need me to spell it out for you? Do you notice what I just did? Well, maybe we should read the Bleak House so that everybody gets my point this time. And of course, my point being that the professors were showing the students that the readers that they couldn't make the connections in the text, and that therefore, because they couldn't make the connections in the text, they were, by virtue of the way that statistics are done in education and social sciences and apparently humanities in the modern educational system, that now we know that the students aren't going to make enough money.
Yeah.
Why don't we read what the story is actually about now that we're in the second hour of the podcast? All right. All right. Are you guys ready? We've got something of an audience. Okay, so do you want to take turns reading, or let's see?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay, I'll.
Just tell me.
So
Okay.
we should do it. We should do it in the way that allegedly the students were supposed to be doing it. But we've already told you way more about the context of it than apparently they were ever given, right? So they were sat down and said, okay, you're doing a reading exercise, and I think the point of it was that the students all thought they were good readers, right? Because they were A and B students for the most part, and so they're given this text cold. It's not clear to me whether they had even like chapter 1 in Chancery, or whether they completely stripped out all of the framing that would have helped them know it was chapter 1 and called in Chancery. But anyway, London. All right. Well, I've already done a whole bunch of work right then. We're in London. Do we care? Right? London. What's London? Think about what you think about when you hear London.
Big city.
Big city.
Giant city. Old city.
Old city. London. It's English. We're reading in English. It doesn't seem to me that the students. Well, the thing is, we didn't get the full code. We just got the report of how they coded everything, but the sense of, okay, you've read London, like I did in my joke in the Substack, Pittsburgh, right? Because that's where Carlson is now
Okay.
teaching, right?
But the one was Philadelphia. But go on.
It was I know I looked the professors up, and so she's in Pittsburgh, and some of the references in my Substack version were to places in Pittsburgh, but London. Okay, so we've already been given a lot of information right there. The story has a setting. Here we are. We're in London. Okay, well, we're in London. We're sitting there. Michaelmas term. Well, I know a lot about what Michaelmas term is because I studied in Cambridge, and for it, if you go to school in England now, you'll know what I guess you would. I mean, they have Michaelmas term in both Oxford and Cambridge.
This is September through October.
Right, because Michaelmas, it's the autumn
Michaelmas,
term.
September
It
29th.
starts
Yeah.
September 29th, right? You could say, like, why wouldn't we know what that is now? Well, we clearly don't date things by the seasons the liturgical seasons anymore, but they still use
Right.
them in the Anglican context. They were still using them in the 19th century.
Mm.
Michaelmas term. Well, you'd have a sense that there's a see, it's hard for I can't even play dumb, right? It's like I do know all of this, and I'm sort of trying to think about why do I know it? Like how much would I need to know in order to set myself up to work? Lately over. Okay, so we're at the end of autumn term, and I know that because I went to school in Cambridge, and Michaelmas term
Mm.
was the first one. I liked that it was Michaelmas. It was cool, and
That is
we
cool.
had little diaries that had the different school terms, and there was these little Cambridge diaries. This is in the 80s, and everybody had their little diaries that the university press put out. So, it's like a cool status thing of having your Cambridge term diary.
Mm.
This was, and then I got a Filofax, and then the internet came along later, right? But I spent all my time with my little book. They were about the size of prayer books, so everybody, you had little note. See how far you can go down the rabbit hole. Is this
Rabbit
reading
hole.
comprehension or
3 words.
I've done
She's
3
spoken 3 words.
words? How long do you guys have? And the Lord Chancellor. Lord, that sounds high status.
Sounds
Yes,
official.
sitting in Lincoln's Inn Hall. Lincoln's Inn Hall. I do like that one of the students thought it was an inn, right? Like and the thing is, I do wonder
That
about Lincoln Inn, whether it was in fact at one point a
might have been an in at one point, but the fact that they put hall on the end of it is like your college students like, oh, okay, we still call them halls, even in American universities.
right, right. Like, well, at Chicago, we have a lot of wood paneled rooms with big ceilings and stuff like that, which is I'm not sure whether that's what Lincoln's Inn Hall looks like, but
Mm.
it might do that. Sitting. It's interesting that it started with London. It's like there's this kind of flashing feel. London. This if you had this on screen, you'd know what to do with this, right? London. We have an overview of London.
Yeah.
Zoom in on it's implacable November weather. All right, so it's raining. And you've had a flash shot of the scene that we're sitting in, right?
Mm.
As much mud in the streets. Okay, city's got streets, mud, rain, as if the waters had but newly retired from the face of the earth. Which absolutely
After the
everybody in
flood.
the Substack world got.
Yeah. Receiving floodwaters, people know about. Yes.
Well, but the thing is, they all recognized it was biblical, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
It doesn't seem any of the students got that, but then neither did the professors in their report of what the students didn't understand. Did they seem to get it? It's like the first thing you need to realize is whether or not in Manchester in 1844, Ingalls could find any reports of anybody learning anything in Sunday school.
Hmm.
It's still a story that's there in it's like, but people know what the flood now, right? We've had movies about Noah. So,
That's why. Yeah.
and all kids in Sunday school still learn about Noah's Ark because you get
They
animals.
do.
You get animal
Yeah.
toys. Right. Okay. But newly retired from the face of the earth. And it would not be wonderful to meet a megalosaurus. Ooh. A megalosaurus. 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 Why a megalosaurus? This of course generated the best memes. They put dinosaurs, the AI generated
Oh, that's where that
dinosaurs.
came from. Okay. I was wondering about that. I totally missed it.
Why they're dinosaurs in the
Yeah, why there were dinosaurs
why
in the
there were
street. I'm like,
dinosaurs in the
what?
streets. So someone say, this is great. Bleak House is a fantasy novel about dinosaurs in
Yeah,
Victorian London. Great, I'm reading it, right?
it's like the Wild Wild West, that movie.
Yes, the dinosaurs in the 40 feet long or so, waddling like an elephantine lizard up Holborn Hill. Now, Holborn Hill, I don't know as well in London, but I did look up the megalosaurus. Let me see.
I'm guessing it's some kind of
we
moving
got
contraption.
well I've got megala how do mega saurus. Whoa, there we go. I'm misspelling megalosaurus. Oh, there it is. Okay, meaning great lizard from Greek, because they were able to look stuff up in Wikipedia if they wanted to. From Greek megas, meaning big, tall, or great, and saurus, meaning lizard. Okay.
Yeah, it's just big dinosaur, big
Um,
lizard.
right, but there's a lot of detail here. Now, so again, one of the things that obviously I can do very quickly because I've done it and practiced it for decades is scan for information. Which if they went off topic and realizing we're 8 minutes in and I've just started and we're not even to the end of the first sentence. Um, that how much can you? This is what I wonder about the claim that the students can't read. It's like I want to test how much they can sort information because this is where the AI is going to test them, right? What degree can you put links together? With the information is flooding at you, how can you find the thing like the dinosaur walking in the muddy streets of London that you actually need to worry about?
Mm.
Well, I know because I just want to show off here that this is a megalosaurus. And it's probably the actual one that Dickens was thinking about because they made them for the Crystal Palace exhibition in yeah,
Oh,
yeah. It's
okay.
this is
That
the
that makes sense.
1854 reconstruction in Crystal Palace Park. Um, Megalosaurus as a quadruped, right? And so it's waddling along like an elephantine lizard. He's describing something people had seen in the city.
Right, right.
Yeah,
He's an Englishman speaking to English people about what's going on in the city right
right.
then and there.
Right. It's like saying, the flood, like, and you would not be half surprised to see, think of a like Thanksgiving Day float or something floating down,
Yeah, a big turkey,
a
a
big
giant
turkey
turkey.
floating down the street, ready to be, feasted on or something like that. But of
Hmm.
course, saying, waddling along because the the um the floods receding and the sense of the dinosaurs, in this period, I forgot when Bleak House is written. And the
1870, was it? Was he writing that late? Might
yeah,
have been.
the problem with using okay, close, here we go. Bleak House is we can go back to Bleak House. Bleak Bloop Bleak House. It's between 1852 and 1853.
Oh, okay.
So I
Earlier
think the
than I
thing is the
thought.
Crystal Palace exhibition was in 1851, and so and Dickens was actually quite interested in it, I think. Everybody was interested
Hmm.
in it because it was like a big mixture of all the peoples and classes in London.
Yeah,
Um, so
it's a big fancy circus.
yeah, that you know they were very interested in the way in which it showed them their own their own social context.
Mm.
Now, how do you expect the students to pick up on all of that?
I wouldn't, because I didn't pick up on it either. And you and I have discussed the Crystal Palace many times.
Right? Right?
So,
I mean, so the level it's the level of Dickens is writing into a meme world
hmm,
that
yeah,
if you tested I promise you if you tested these English professors on the stuff I work on, oh guess what? That's my job to find the thing that was completely obvious about I don't know, St. Francis and make us see it again.
hmm,
It's not necessarily visible if you're not embedded in the history and culture of the period, which is why literary studies turned into literary history to a certain extent because sometimes you can't get any of the references. That's why you have to read it with footnotes because these were ordinary things to the people at the time and they're not ordinary to us now. And so all of these references and
right,
allusions and such, guys, the megalosaurus, it's not the same thing as seeing a brontosaurus at the Field Museum or Sue,
right.
right? All the people that I saw making jokey dinosaurs in the AI put in Tyrannosaurus rexes. I don't think they had them in
Yeah.
their fossil record at the time. And if they did, they didn't reconstruct them the way we do now, and so they look different.
Hmm.
Right?
Right.
How many layers of all of this do people actually Yeah, Mel says that looks like the mythical hodag that lives in the north woods of Wisconsin. Yeah. Yes, and Daydream is saying, I bet all those students could read and explain romanticy and read it just fine. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Right? Give their
Hmm.
professors all of the references to all of the, stuff that the kids are reading these days in the internet, and I bet the professors would have difficulty figuring out what to pay attention to, which is the entire point of the exercise. Do you
Hmm.
know what to notice? Okay, now we'll get to like the opening scene is like what time are we in? It's like time out of time, the ages of time, the old time. You could see a dinosaur. It's so like we've been trapped
Right.
in the mud in time
And
forever.
he's just, yeah, and he's describing some slow, laborious, getting stuck in the mud type of place. And it's really setting the mood for what he's about to talk about, I think.
Right. Okay. So now that we've got past the dinosaur, a megalosaur, smoke lowering down from chimney pots. Okay. Some of them apparently had to look up what chimney pots were. I
Okay.
fine. I remember growing. See, I'm going to do this for the entire hour. I'm going to get through one paragraph. Um, when I was growing up, and Sesame Street was on, maybe that may be a CIA plot too. Um, I thought it was a fictional place because I'd never seen a brownstone.
Oh, oh, that's neat.
Right. So all
That's a
of
neat
this stuff,
memory.
it's like the I'd never seen New York City. I had no idea. It's like they're making it in New York, and it's like this is an ordinary street neighborhood, and I'm like, I'm living in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Why would, and these kids are in Kansas, right? Why would I know what a brownstone is?
Hmm.
Never mind a chimney pot, right?
Yeah, well, it was the whole show was made for city kids to help them learn how to read and count
Right, but it
before
was
they went to
set in a
school.
city that most of us had never seen.
Yeah, I was 3 miles. I was their target audience. I lived only like 3 miles away from where they were filming it.
Really?
Well,
So
yeah, I did when I
for,
was real little.
for you, it was a real place. For me, it was
Yeah.
Fantasyland. I'd never seen like a street like that with the houses all stuck together. Why would the houses all be stuck together?
Yeah, yeah, that's a
They're
good point.
yards. You have it. You have to have a yard and the house and chain link fence and garden, vegetable garden in back and stuff. We were in Nebraska.
Mm.
There was a lot of construction around us, and guys digging. The kids would play in construction
No,
ditches from the.
you didn't have a garden. You had a greengrocer, right? And
My
Sesame
mom had a
Street.
garden where we were in
Right, right.
Nebraska.
But other people wouldn't know that. What they would know is the guy that runs the vegetable stand because that was pretty typical back then.
Vegetables. I saw all of these things when I
Yes,
finally go to New York and in graduate school, and it's like all these things they were on television.
it's Sesame Street.
It's Sesame Street. It looks just like it. They've got like stands out with food
Yeah,
in them and stuff. Yeah. Okay. So
yes.
apparently, not knowing what a chimney pot is evidence of lack of reading comprehension. I don't know.
Not
Um,
if you didn't have a chimney growing up. But
Making soft black drizzle with flakes of soot in it as big as full-grown snowflakes. Okay, we'd seen snow, black snow. Okay, that makes sense. Gone into morning, one might imagine, for the death of the sun. Well,
Hmm,
that's, I mean, everybody goes into mourning all the time in Victorian England. So
yes,
apparently, mourning goes out of fashion after World War One
really.
because people had to. I was reading about this because of the black dye. I
Hmm.
was reading about
No,
color and black dye and black colors. Black as a color was considered, more. It becomes more high class in late Victorian England because synthetic red dyes come in and like they're making all of these synthetic dyes with petroleum and
hmm.
because out of coal and stuff, and that brings down the price of brilliant colors, and so that's how we end up with drab colors now.
Ah,
Okay, professors, are you footnoting all of this? Am I passing your test? How much reading comprehension do you want me to have? Where, how far down do we go?
yeah.
Right? Dogs, undistinguishable in mire. Horses, scarcely better, splashed to their very blinkers. Wait, what are blinkers? Anybody seen a horse read? What are
I
blinkers?
don't.
Oh wait, they're horses down. Oh wait, the blink. Do they have like
They're
lights on
blind. We
them?
call
Do
them
they have? Do they have? Is it maybe?
blinders.
Yeah. Well, I know what they are, but I'm pretending, right? It's like,
Okay.
but what if say you've seen the horse carriages in downtown Chicago, and they have to? Well, they took them away. Now there's blinking bicycle carts. But back when they had horses, maybe the blinkers means like the lights they have on the bottom of the carriage so they can make turn signals. Blinkers.
Don't think they had those.
But see, it's like, when are you going to decide you know it and you don't? Maybe they're reading
So
aloud,
here's
splashed to their very blinkers. Cars have blinkers. Maybe the
so
horses
here's
had
it right
blinkers.
because they didn't tell what year it was. They've got no context at all. It's just in a big city and it's muddy because there's been a lot of rain.
Right.
Now
These
they
could be
might
Chicago blinking horses.
You're right. They could say, well, there's horses. Well, I've seen hansom cabs. They have horse carriages in the city still. So they still don't necessarily know what time period it is.
Right. The daydreamer. We're going to invent the EPAP YouTube video. Every phrase a pause. Yes. This we never promised you an audiobook. This is a reading comprehension test.
Yeah.
Okay. So we still don't know what those blinkers are, right? They're blinking horses, right? Okay. Foot passengers. Okay, that's I mean, we say pedestrians now, right? But foot passengers, that sounds like what are they right? Maybe they're right. Oh, the foot passengers. Maybe they're riding around on those little like um scooter carts. You think? Foot passengers like they no, okay.
I'm
Jostling
sorry, reading ahead. Because that's what I do. I need context. Anyway, go on.
Well, but okay, but see if they gave them this paragraph and this is the first of 7, maybe we won't get through all of them. Um you guys see what my classes are like? I do this with history. That you could get very easily lost in all of these things, and they obviously in 1852 53 London, this is ordinary stuff.
Right. He's
Right.
painting a picture so that you can see what he's writing. So
Right.
you can see, like the movie in your head, right?
It's
The only
making
reason, right?
go
The only
ahead.
reason we're stopping and trying to decipher all of it is because we're putting ourselves in the place of these students that were put through this ambush test and told they need to comprehend all of it. Well, we know this was written in the 19th century, so we're looking for 19th century clues. They weren't necessarily doing that.
Right. If they weren't told that it was a 19th century story, they have no clue, right? The blinker, I'm still
Right.
going to stick with the blinkers have those lights. The horses have lights on their butts. Okay.
Okay.
Jostling one another's umbrellas. Okay. Got that. In a general infection of ill temper. Ooh, wow. Did they all just have a plague? Is everybody mad at each other because they can't go outside without a mask? And losing their foothold at street corners. Okay. Where tens of thousands of other foot passengers have been slipping and sliding since the day broke. That's a big city. Tens of thousands. That's a lot. If
Yeah.
this day ever broke. Okay, so it's dark.
It's very dark. Yeah.
The black snow, dark. Adding new deposits to the crust upon crust of mud, sticking at those points tenaciously to the pavement. What's pavement? Oh, right, sidewalk. Right, it's like everybody who got. It's like why would you know what the pavement is a sidewalk? Right, it's just we would say sidewalk.
I did know that. I would say either. Actually, we need to read Alvin and Seed again.
You're so cosmopolitan. Grew up in Sesame Street and everything.
I did. I grew up in Sesame Street. If you knew where, you'd be like, don't tell anybody that.
You could speak German when you were 2 and you grew up in Sesame Street.
I don't speak it anymore. See, that's the thing. The brains don't stay, at least not with me. They just kind of went like this and leveled out. So use it or lose it. It's a true thing.
And accumulating at compound interest. Okay, so I think one of the students actually did look that up, the compound interest part, and wonder about it. So here's the one of them talking about this paragraph. Talk about the November weather. Mud in the streets, and I do probably need to look up Megalosaurus. Met a Megalosaurus 40 feet long or so. So it's probably some kind of animal or something or another it is talking about encountering the streets. Fair. And wandering like an elephantine lizard up Holborn Hill. So, yep, I think we encountered some kind of animal. An animal these characters have met in the street. Yep, I think we've encountered some kind of animal these characters have met in the street. Fair, right? Okay, and their comment is, the subject does not really understand what is happening in the passage and makes guesses that do not help her comprehension. For example, she decides that Michaelmas term is a person instead of a set term. Well, there's no clue in that. There's no grammar. It's Michaelmas term lately over. I mean, that does seem to suggest a time period, but they're both capitalized. Michaelmas term.
But it is a real person, right? And it's a real thing. I mean, the mass named for Michael. and that's a season. So there's a lot. There's a lot in that
There's
one,
a lot,
those two
yeah.
words. A lot.
She
Yeah, they're
also so I mean it's like they're marking her down for not realizing what she doesn't understand. But I'm going to stand by my blinking horses and prove that you made it was like what kind of clue are you supposed to have here?
yeah.
She also does not look up megalosaurus, though she says she will, and assumes the word means some kind of animal. It does.
Hmm.
That's the whole point of it. It's an animal from before the
Right.
flood,
It's a
right?
reproduction. Yeah.
Which ensures that she will not notice the figurative image of a dinosaur walking down a London street. Well, duh.
Who would? That's not a normal thing.
I mean, I think the guys making the joke about, look, it's a fantasy novel about dinosaurs wandering around the streets are right.
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
Dickens wants you to imagine that. We've got Bleak House cover on the screen right now.
Right.
He wants you to imagine that um, sculpture prop
The
walking
writer was
down the street.
imagining it.
Yeah,
The writer was imagining this whole thing. He's imagining this. He's looking at this very, Dickens was very good at this naming conventions. Yeah, he's looking at this very bleak picture out of this window of this giant old decrepit hall, and everything's dark, and he's imagining this big dinosaur slowly lumbering its way like a big elephant up the slippery hill, because everything's slow and difficult and mired in mud. It's a very good opening paragraph.
well, and the Megalosaurus was actually there in London. It was a
Yeah, and it was
statue,
there. Right.
but
I was wondering, was it an animatron? Could they do things that big?
I don't think so.
Make them move?
These are
Okay.
no. I think, but the thing is, the
I know they
Victorians
made
were just
small
as
ones, real ones.
the Victorians loved the idea of reconstructing these dinosaurs just like we do now, right? So that
Yeah,
he's
paleontology
making
was
you
new then.
imagine this. You wouldn't be surprised to meet this megalosaurus, and in fact, people had seen them in the exhibition that year. So
There had been many exhibitions in England in the 19th century because they paleontology started in earnest then as a discipline, and they were digging up all these bones and trying to reconstruct them everywhere.
right,
Yeah, so it was popular. That they wouldn't know that because they don't know what time period they're reading about, and even if they did, they wouldn't know that fact necessarily.
right. So she got that it was an animal. That's right.
Hmm.
Okay, your turn. Oh, wait, no, wait, compound interest. I haven't finished yet. Okay, obviously, the big metaphor here is the mud is filling up the streets, crusting over, like accumulating at compound interest. So this is about money,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah,
And that is the delicious. The compound interest is, of course, the anchor of all of this in Dickens'
yeah.
metaphor, which it's
Because it feels like a curveball, just compound interest. Whoa,
whoa,
what?
yeah. And then all everybody loves reading goes, oh my gosh, that's cool, there's the clue, right?
Yeah.
It's here we have now he's turning you to be thinking about compound interest on debt.
Oh,
Very good, right?
yeah.
Okay, your turn. You can do the next paragraph.
Okay. Fog everywhere. Still dark. Fog up the river where it flows among green aits and meadows. I don't know what an ait
I
is,
had to look up
but
8 too.
so among green aits and meadows. So
I
I know what a
forgot
meadow
what
is.
it is. It's a landscape feature.
It's a patch. It's a patch of grass, I'm guessing, because this is green aits. Fog down the river where it rolls defiled among the tiers of shipping and the waterside pollutions of a great and dirty city. Lots of industry going on. And it's probably adding to the pollution, I'm guessing, into the darkness.
Mm.
Everything's big and heavy and dense and dark. Fog on the Essex marshes, fog on the Kentish heights, fog creeping into the cabooses of collier brigs. Okay, caboose is a train. Okay, fog on the Essex marshes, fog on the Kentish heights. So these are different areas around London, I'm guessing. More green areas because they're marshes. The Kentish Heights, that's just, I'm guessing that's a hill over London. And maybe you can see more. Maybe that's where the rich people live. Because they're not down
See,
in the
I
dirty
don't think
areas.
you understand this very well. I don't think you figured this out.
Fog creeping into the cabooses of collier brigs. I think that's a train. Fog lying out on the yards and hovering in the rigging of great ships. Okay, shipyards.
So you're
There's
wrong
fog
about the
everywhere.
Collier Briggs.
Oh, was I?
Yeah.
What said cabooses though? Isn't a caboose just a train? End of a train?
I think brigs are ships.
But it's a shipyard, so the trains brought supplies to the ships. They had rails going to the
Okay, we
shipyards.
can't even figure this out. Maybe we should look it up. Chat, please look it up. Come on.
Okay.
Daydreamer, the Victorians would have loved Jurassic Park. Yes.
Yeah, they would have
It's basic.
actually.
Yes, they
Yeah.
basically did the first Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
And
Fog
Daydreamer saying,
drooping.
"Where are the velocipedes?" Indeed.
The velocipedes.
Okay, we need chat. We
Velocipedes.
need you to look up
Shark
Collier Briggs for us. The thing is, I think the idea is it's the so fog is this. We've got had the mud and the dark and the black snow,
darkness and the
and it's
fog,
all
and it's
crusting up
laying.
like
Yeah, and
compound interest. And
and it's
now
tripping people up like compound interest.
it's tripping people up like compound interest. Nothing's
Yeah.
clear. The fog is going everywhere. You remember that this was the most fun that I had quoting the professor's evaluation of all of this. That their footnotes were all fog. Like for real.
Oh, that's why you kept emphasizing.
Yes, that's why I highlighted it. It's like, wait a minute.
She asked me not to read this ahead of time, so I didn't. But that's
Okay,
okay.
so that's
Now I
what
get
it's
it.
the
That's funny.
fog, right? And the thing is, what's so funny about that is
Fog.
that one of their actual sources was Nita Fogg et al. Skills and the Earnings of College Graduates, the ETS Center for Research on Human Capital in Education, March 2019, files.eric.ed.gov/fulltext/ed595423.pdf. Fog.
Wow.
Fog. Fog everywhere.
The fog of references.
So that you can't see clearly. They're in it. How's that for compound interest?
I think it's emanating from them. Okay.
Yeah. Wait. So, best start believing in metaphorical compound interest. You're in it.
You're in it. You're in it.
Miss Turner.
Oh.
So my reading of it, my guess about this is that it's the Thames flows down through these regions. So Essex is to the south of London, and Kent is down by the end of the outflow of the Thames, and the Kentish Heights would be like Dover, I think. And I have to look at a map. I think it's showing you the fog sort of flowing down the river.
Right.
And
yeah.
then
Like right. Everything emanates from London and just spreads out through the entire country.
Right. Ha ha. I win. Okay.
Okay.
Mel, thank you, Mel. Collier Briggs were two-masted, flat-bottomed, and strongly built ships used primarily in the 18th and 19th centuries to carry coal, particularly between the coal fields of northern England and London. These vessels were known for their sturdy construction and ability to handle the harsh conditions of the North Sea.
Where did cabooses come from?
They must be so caboose. Clearly, it's like so. This is around the time the railways are still spreading. The early railways start in the 40s, the 1840s. I have a map in my Eurosip class where we show the spread of the rails. The caboose must be taken from ships and put on trains, right? And I think
it came from the ships first.
It came from the ships first, and the caboose would presumably be the back. Like if it's caboose on a train, it would be at the back. So a caboose on a colliery brig, presumably they're the end. I'm imagining them.
It carries the coal.
No, they're the command areas, right? And the coal would be in the front of the. It's like barges, right?
Right.
And you have.
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying.
It's like from a ship, you have the steering in the back on the quarterdeck, and so a caboose, I think, is like that. I'm guessing. It could be. I could have just described a megalosaurus as a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I don't know.
It's like the way we use the word pilot for people who fly planes. It was originally for boats, so that makes sense.
Yes. So maybe now we've learned something from context.
and
I guess we learned how to read somewhere when we were 2. Maybe. Okay.
Fog drooping on the gunwales of barges and small boats.
So see, that sense is all boats, brigs, ships, barges, and boats.
Yeah.
So we've got the fog on all the water. Okay.
Fog in the eyes and throats of ancient Greenwich pensioners, wheezing by the firesides of their wards. Oh, that's dark. That's Dickens.
What is it?
Fog in the eyes and throats of ancient Greenwich pensioners, old people who are getting sick from the fog because it's probably full of coal dust.
Right.
Wheezing by the firesides of their wards, trying to keep warm.
But
I'm
wards,
not
our
sure.
wards here is ambiguous.
Wards could be just an old age home. It could be a hospital. It could just be an area of the city. But that doesn't make sense because they're in their fireside, so that's inside a house somewhere.
Oh, Mel says the Collier Brigs are tugboat like. So imagine them,
Okay, got
yeah.
it.
Okay.
Fog in the stem and bowl of the afternoon pipe of the wrathful skipper, down in his close cabin. So that's the ship captain's smoking. There's smoke everywhere, and people are breathing extra smoke in
Yeah.
on their time off. Fog cruelly pinching the toes and fingers of his shivering little prentice boy on deck. So yeah, so the skipper's, this is typical Dickens. It's the skipper's down keeping warm and he's smoking a
Mm.
pipe, and the apprentice boy, which is probably a very young boy of 7 or 8, is up on the cold deck getting assaulted by this cold fog and rain.
Okay. Navigating patterns tells us a ward is a region.
Oh, okay. I
Okay.
guess okay. That was one of them. I guessed. Okay.
Okay.
Chance people on the bridges peeping over the parapets into a nether sky of fog, with fog all around them as they were up in a balloon and hanging in the misty clouds. There's so much fog, it's like they're up in the air.
Oh,
Let's see.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the end of that paragraph. So he's kind of hinting at the oppression of the people, just the area itself being very oppressive and heavy with industry and the pollution that comes with that, and the what was it? I don't want to. The injustice isn't the right word. Um, the differences between classes.
Yes, because it's covering all of them. It catches yes, and as you say, you know enough about Dickens to know that he's going to make you pay attention to the different social strata
Right.
in the
Yeah.
characters. Okay, so in this one they're talking about the fog. One of the readers, this is in the category of the ones that they said problematic readers. Um, the original text reads, they read out the fog part and the pollutions, great and dirty city. Facilitator. Okay, subject. There's just fog everywhere. It's accurate. More about the fog creeping on the barges of small boats. And the facilitator says, okay, so what do you see in this sentence beside fog? Subject. I know there's a train, which we made the same excuse because of the caboose, right?
Right. It's a mistake. Yeah.
And there's like the industrial parts of the city. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
And
Yeah.
they comment, by reducing all these details in the passage to vague generic language, the subject does not really read closely enough to follow the fog as it moves throughout the shipyards. Well, she got tripped up by caboose, which we
Yeah.
did too.
Mm-hmm.
And as she continues to skip over almost all the concrete details in the following sentences, she never recognizes that this literal fog, as it expands throughout London, becomes a symbol for the confusion, disarray, and blindness of the Court of Chancery.
Okay, she's being a little bit too specific with her interpretation there. You can interpret it different ways,
Well, we
you
haven't
know.
even gotten, I mean, we haven't gotten to Chancery yet either, right? It's
Yeah.
like, it's just
Well, it
that,
says it says in Chancery, chapter 1, but that doesn't mean anything. That's not part of the text that we're reading. It was just a title.
not that part. So
Yeah.
they say they simplify. So what, I mean, they're saying they're not doing the ridiculously exhaustive unpacking that we're doing.
Yeah.
And saying because they can't do that unpacking, they're not comprehending it. But the summaries that they're giving, and this is the problem with the exercises that these students have all been trained on. They've been trained that reading comprehension is being able to do that's why
Very
Chat
simple.
GPT
Yeah.
and AI have the
Yeah.
grip on people they do right now, is because
It's such a
everybody's
shame. This is such rich language. It's such rich imagery. It is a shame. But you're right. They're taught to distill it in short bites.
yeah.
Just give me the bottom line. What's this about? Fog's everywhere, and it's very industrial city. Okay, next.
She was right.
Yeah, she is right. She's not wrong. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, if you gave problematic student number 65, whatever, this passage and said what it's about, it says it's a fog in a polluted city. It is.
Yeah. And
because
I got to say,
because I mean because they've been reduced to reading so that they can fill in multiple. You and I did these too when we took the PSAT and the SAT and the GRA,
mhm,
right? And you're
yeah.
given a paragraph and it's all coded because you do those tests by filling in little dots that can be fed through a whatever kind of reader they call those things that you feed them through, the
Yeah.
little dots machines, and come out with a number that says you know how to read because you were able to
So,
distill it out of this paragraph and answer the multiple choice questions.
so here's something interesting. The SAT was started by a man who was trying to break Harvard of its habit of just admitting legacies. He wanted people who could do the work, who didn't necessarily go to the best schools or come from the best families, to be able to have a chance to benefit from a Harvard education. But at the time he was doing this, everybody in the public schools actually got a pretty good education. You know, they did. They don't now. They don't today necessarily. Like I use my own example and yours. You went to school districts with wildly different expectations of their students. Some of them were high, some of them were super low, and I don't think that was the case 100 years ago or however long it was. I don't think it was quite 100 years ago when the SAT was developed. I think it was developed in the 1930s or 40s or something. But
Well, so it's
even back
interesting.
then,
It's
schools were better.
interesting you mentioned the 1930s and 40s. It's around the 1940s that they start coding books for grade level,
Mm,
and they do it quite literally by counting the number of words in the sentence.
that is so dumb.
And that and so that the
So
horror
dumb.
stories. This comes out of the. It's a study on all the horror story books about like the sex books that kids are finding in their libraries now.
Yeah.
They and I keep it's Deborah DeGroot. Is that right?
Mm,
Um, she did a study of it, but the introduction of it is talking about the way in which the books are said to be grade level, which is what this exercise is also doing. It's saying, whether or not they're reading at grade level.
yeah.
That we have the American publishers have been using these categories to feed us. It's like why Dr. Seuss books and stuff like that. It's like you can start reading with anything. You don't necessarily need to start with the simple. You know how
Mhm.
St. Francis learned to read. Shall I read to you the way St. Francis learned to read?
Yes. I'm almost afraid to say yes, but yes.
Domine, labia mea pereis, et os meum initiabit laudum tuum. Deus, I have to cross myself, in adjutorium meum intende. Domine ad adjuvandum me festina, gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritus Sancto, sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. Alleluia. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Venite. Oh, it's not Italian or even French. Venite. You couldn't read those languages. They weren't written down yet. This was.
People have to remember Venite adoremus, right? Remember
Venite. Well,
that? Yeah.
that's the hymn, right? Um,
That's the hymn, right? People recognize it if you put it to Christmas music.
well,
But
this
yeah.
is Psalm 94. So, Venite exultamus Domino, jubilemus Deo salutare nostro, praecupemus faciam eius in confessione et in salmes jubilemus ei. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Quoniam Deus magnus Dominus et rex magnus super omnes Deus, quoniam non repellet Dominus plebum suum, qui manu eius sunt omnes fines terrae et altitudines montium ipse conspicit, Dominus tecum. Quoniam ipse estus mare et ipse fecit illud, rerum funeverum manis. What you don't understand, you can't read, can you? Venite adoremus et procedamus ante Deum. That what's interesting is like Francis. The paper I'm working on is on his Office of the Passion, which is a pastiche of Psalms. He knew the Psalms so well that he can make a mosaic version of them to his own sort of rendering of imagining the well, one of the editors calls it the jest in the sense of the epic of the great king, right? So he does this
Mm,
heraldic story with the Psalms that he learned by reading them this way in Latin, memorized them, and was able to craft and compose with them and such like that.
yeah,
Medieval children learned to read using the Psalms, using Latin,
right.
using the prayers, and
And Puritan children learned to read too, and they had a very
yes,
high very, very high literacy rate by reading the Bible.
because they read the Bible to pray.
And even in many public schools, not just Puritan, until around 1900, this is how people learned how to read in school. Young children learned how to read
Right.
by reading the Bible. Not anymore.
Well, and they'd be tested by being able to read out loud, right? A lot of the McGuffey readers, they're all readers to be read out loud.
Oh, sure. I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah, I remember reading out loud, being very young. Yeah.
Yes. So if we're not, I mean, it's like, how are we how are we deciding that students can, I mean, they did, to be fair to this exercise, they did have them read out loud and talk about it. So that's somewhat fair. But the sense of, I forgot where I was going. Oh, that we've been tested on reading comprehension now to make those summaries, right? That's why, and they said,
Yes.
if people think, Spark Notes and Wikipedia and such are actually useful tools because they've been taught that that's what you're trying to get out of a thing. You're trying to suck out the juice of the text.
And they'll get some of it right, but they won't get all of it, and that's a pity.
Well, all the examples of their problematic readers, they did, and it's a dinosaur and fog.
Right. They got it.
They got
Yeah.
it.
It's like, well, if they said to them that they give them the instructions, say, okay, well, so tell me why he's talking so much about certain images, why he's putting, what is there an ulterior purpose to it, or I don't know. I don't know how they explained it to him. Just give me the short description of what you just read. Is he's imagining a dinosaur walking up a foggy street and it's a real dirty city. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. That's those two paragraphs in a nutshell.
And that's what AI came up with when they wanted to render it as pictures.
Yeah. And Dickens if he would see it, he'd be like, right on. That's exactly what he's thinking about. Right. Because he's using his language to try to
give you that image.
Give you that image.
It worked.
And it did work. Of course, Dickens did it better than AI did. In my opinion, it looks much more interesting in my head because you can't see it all.
Yeah. But
which is why books are better.
The thing is, based on the way they talk about it, the facilitators don't say anything except okay.
Okay, so they're not giving any further instructions. They're not giving any more prompts.
I'm going to ask you to kind of explain what you read so far. It's right. The facilitators in the exercise were themselves either graduate students or undergraduates. They weren't.
I could see why they didn't necessarily want to give them prompts if they wanted to see what they understood. But like you said, the shaming was bad because they did give you what they understood and they weren't wrong.
Right, they weren't wrong, and I would like. It's like the sort of, it's like, if I'm so tongue tied about this. This exercise has been used to claim that all these college students can't read, right? And when what they're actually showing that they're not able to do at the the deep level that college professors imagine they do is an explication de texte, right? They're actually expecting them to read like, oh, I don't know, medieval readers, and go through and do like I'm doing and like we're doing in this, wring out all of the meaning of the text from all of the different layers of literal, symbolic, and spiritual.
Right.
I love if everybody learned to read like that.
No, they didn't. So you said these were English majors,
yeah,
or were these education majors with an English concentration? Because
I think the undergraduates from English majors.
Yeah, the English majors, they should have. And were they freshmen? What classes had they taken so far? I think I mentioned I had very good English teachers in my junior and senior year of high school, so I got very lucky because I got people who knew and loved their subject. That's not necessarily what these kids got 10 years ago, because a lot of school districts stopped requiring subject matter experts to teach their subjects and just said, you just need an education degree. You don't need to have a degree in math to teach math or English to teach English. You just need an education degree, and we'll give you the curriculum, and then you'll teach them the curriculum. So what they got was exactly what they ordered. They know how to read.
What you're saying. The students were English majors, but they were going through school with people that may or may not
who didn't necessarily have had an English degrees. Correct.
Right. So blaming the
Yeah,
students is really,
wrong.
wrong,
That's wrong.
and saying, "Oh, well, they can't read." Yeah, there's no whisper in the paper about it, about why they ended up in this situation.
exactly. Their correct conclusion should have been, we didn't teach them correctly in high school, and we need to change that
Right.
because we don't want to get them in college when they don't even know the basics of like illusion and alliteration or any other kind of things that they might need
Well, based on
while
the
trying to determine the
summary about
text.
how this matters only to make money, I'm not sure the people writing the report know what the point
They
of
don't care.
reading is.
I know they don't care. It's like they're not going to make enough money. It's like doing what? Teaching English? No, trust me, they'll make plenty of money teaching English because the requirements for teachers of English have been dumbed down to just get an education degree in a lot of places.
Right. So our chat is saying uh, academics cannot do poetic informing. They miss proper metaphor, allegory, and flourish. Well, indeed. This is
Yeah.
all right. Look, we've got the mud, the fog, gas, and not we're not going to finish unless I just keep reading without comment.
You can read without
Gas.
comment and then we can go over it.
What? Should I
Yeah,
keep?
yeah. Yeah, it's
Okay.
because I love Dickens. I
Okay.
do.
We'll settle. We have a little more time. I'll settle in and actually read this as if we're enjoying the story rather than dissecting it. Gas looming through the fog in diverse places in the streets, much as the sun may, from the spongy fields, be seen to loom by husbandman and plowboy. Most of the shops lighted 2 hours before their time, as the gas seems to know, for it is a haggard and unwilling look. The raw afternoon is rawest, and the dense fog is densest, and the muddy streets are muddiest, near that leaden-headed old obstruction, appropriate ornament for the threshold of a leaden-headed old corporation, Temple Bar. And hard by Temple Bar in Lincoln's Inn Hall, at the very heart of the fog, sits the Lord High Chancellor in his high court of chancery. Never can there come fog too thick, never can there come mud and mire too deep, to assort with the groping and floundering condition which this high court of chancery, most pestilent of hoary sinners, holds this day in the sight of heaven and earth. On such an afternoon, if ever, the Lord High Chancellor ought to be sitting here, as here he is, with a foggy glory round his head, softly fenced in with crimson cloth and curtains, addressed by a large advocate with great whiskers, a little voice, and an interminable brief, and outwardly directing his contemplation to the lantern in the roof, where he can see nothing but fog. On such an afternoon, some score of members of the High Court of Chancery Bar ought to be, as here they are, mistily engaged in one of the 10,000 stages of an endless cause, tripping one another up on slippery precedents, groping knee-deep in technicalities, running their goat hair and horsehair warded heads against walls of words, and making a pretense of equity with serious faces, as players might. On such an afternoon, the various solicitors in the cause, some 2 or 3 of whom have inherited it from their fathers, who made a fortune by it, ought to be, as are they not, ranged in a line, in a long matted well, but you might look in vain for truth at the bottom of it. Between the registrar's red table and the silk gowns, with bills, cross-bills, answers, rejoinders, injunctions, affidavits, issues, references to masters' reports, mountains of costly nonsense, piled before them. Well may the court be dim with wasting candles here and there. Well may the fog hang heavy in it, as if it would never get out. Well may the stained glass windows lose their color and admit no light of day into the place. Well may the uninitiated from the streets, who peep in through the glass panes in the door, be deterred from entrance by its owlish aspect, and by the drawl languidly echoing to the roof from the padded dais, where the Lord High Chancellor looks into the lantern that has no light in it, and where the attendant wigs are all stuck in a fog bank. This is the Court of Chancery, which has its decaying houses and its blighted lands in every shire, which has its worn-out lunatic in every madhouse, and its dead in every churchyard, which has its ruined suitor with his slipshod heels and threadbare dress, borrowing and begging through the round of every man's acquaintance, which gives to moneyed might the means abundantly of wearying out the right, which so exhausts finances, patience, courage, hope, so overthrows the brain and breaks the heart that there is not an honorable man among its practitioners who would not give who does not often give the warning, suffer any wrong that can be done you, rather than come here. Who happened to be in the Lord Chancellor's court this murky afternoon, besides the Lord Chancellor, the counsel in the cause, 2 or 3 counsel who are never in any cause, and the well of solicitors before mentioned. There is the registrar below the judge in wig and gown, and there are 2 or 3 maces, or petty bags, or privy purses, or whatever they may be, in legal court suits. These are all yawning, for no crumb of amusement ever falls from Jarndyce and Jarndyce, the cause in hand, which was squeezed dry years upon years ago. The shorthand writers, the reporters of the court, and the reporters of the newspapers invariably decamp with the rest of the regulars when Jarndyce and Jarndyce comes on. Their places are a blank. Standing on a seat at the side of the hall, the better to peer into the curtained sanctuary, is the little mad old woman in a squeezed bonnet, who is always in court, from its sitting to its rising, and always expecting some incomprehensible judgment to be given in her favor. Some say she really is, or was, a party to a suit, but no one knows for certain because no one cares. She carries some small litter in a reticule, which she calls her documents, principally consisting of paper matches and dry lavender. A sallow prisoner has come up in custody for the half-dozenth time to make a personal application to purge himself of his contempt, which, being a solitary surviving executor, has fallen into a state of conglomeration about accounts of which it is not pretended that he had ever any knowledge. He is not at all likely ever to do. In the meantime, his prospects in life are ended. Another ruined suitor who periodically appears from Shropshire and breaks out into efforts to address the Chancellor at the close of the day's business, and can by no means be made to understand that the Chancellor is legally ignorant of his existence after making it desolate for a quarter of a century, plants himself in a good place and keeps an eye on the judge, ready to call out, "My lord!" in a voice of sonorous complaint on the instant of his rising. A few lawyers, clerks, and others who know this suitor by sight linger on the chance of his furnishing some fun and enlivening the dismal weather a little. Jarndyce and Jarndyce drones on.
Bleak.
Bleak.
Very bleak. Suffer any wrong that can be done you rather than come here. All who enter here.
Abandon hope.
All you abandon hope. All you who enter here. Right. Yeah. This is still going on today, and I love the way he describes these kinds of courts basically polluting every corner of the country.
Right.
Every corner of the country, and impoverishing everyone who tries to bring a suit. It still goes on today. Right? People with money take people to court and just wear them out until there's nothing left, until they're gone. And it's a very cold business. And the lawyers there and the other people of the court who work there say, "Oh, he's coming back again. This should be fun. Let's laugh at him." You know,
Right.
It's awful. These people are horrible. They're awful, and you feel so bad for these people who just keep coming because they want their justice. They want their day in court. They want satisfaction from their day in court, and they're never going to get it. It's very bleak house.
They gave the students this passage to read as an exercise in proving the students couldn't read.
It's not easy to read. It's difficult.
Well, no.
Because there's a lot going on. That's not difficult for me, but
no, I mean they put they totally missed Dickens' point. Just the court putting the people in that situation. I mean,
laughing at them. Yeah.
The sneer,
irony.
The irony of having the professors tell to the students, "You can't read because we have sat as the Lord High Chancellor in his wig, surrounded by his solicitors, refusing your suit."
Yeah.
Talk about
the law and you don't.
Tone deaf.
Yeah, we know the text and you don't. Let's laugh at them. Right. Yeah.
That's what I said that's what I wanted people to pick up from in my Substack. Not, it's like, look, they gave the students the same exercise that Dickens says the lawyers were giving all of those suitors who they show up regularly with their pathetic papers and their wait, will you hear me? Will you hear me? Will you hear me? Will you hear me? Will you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
need me to spell it out for you? Do you notice what I just did? Why should we expect our students to be able to read for scriptural allusions and figures of speech, images and cross references and patterns of meaning, for symbolism and beauty and the resonances of phonemes, when everything in their education is telling them that reading is a skill that they need to make money? And making
Right.
money means filling in the right forms to get shipments from China or contracts from India. Why should we expect our students to enjoy reading when we have reduced their education to a series of bullet points that they might as well get from SparkNotes or ChatGPT? Why should they care about reading when their souls have been rendered in statistics in the calculation of our national GDP? Truly, it is as if the waters had only just retired from the face of the earth, and the dinosaurs, dragons, and unicorns had all drowned, leaving behind rotting skeletons of the joy that we once had in singing to God. And you wonder the students cannot look up from their phones.
Yeah, they're bored out of their minds.
Our education system has killed the joy.
Yeah.
And that is unforgivable. Absolutely unforgivable. My grandmother was an English teacher and a Latin teacher. My other grandmother started a daycare. You made this of our world by reducing their reading to codes that you can then shame them with and say college students can't read. How dare you? How dare you? The pollution. Think about it. Think about it. Think what we've done to our children. And they made this pathetic, dreadful test. How dare they mock the students with this? That's your Dickens for you, professors.
It is. You would have had fun with them.
Oh, yeah. You think I can read, professors? Yes, I can.
Yeah. No joy in that world. Just a lot of industry and fog. Sclerotic people with Excel charts calculating how much money you can make.
I use Excel charts. My Excel charts reveal patterns and joy, right? They do.
Well, I won't tell you what mine revealed when I used them back in the day.
Well, I make a lot of Excel charts about like which Psalms Francis is using because I want to understand his craft.
That's the fun way, yes.
Right? Not Excel charts to prove that someone actually summarized a text correctly and then you decide that they didn't get the metaphor. You didn't get the metaphor.
How odd is it that they're using an Excel spreadsheet to decide whether or not somebody got metaphor and an allusion correct. It's like,
yes,
I don't think you got the point of Dickens. Yeah.
Exactly. Megalosaurus, my butt.
Yeah. That is such a beautiful opening. Now, you told me not to read this and I didn't, but when I read your article, I'm like, I've never read Bleak House. What is Bleak House? I wasn't sure, actually. I know I hadn't read it.
Now
but
you know, right? It's like it's all there. It's all there in the opening passage.
Yeah, it is. I watched a lot of productions of Dickens, but I can't remember if I watched Bleak House or not. So I looked up a description of it before I read this, before I knew I was going to be reading this today. And so I kind of knew it was about a lawsuit. I went, oh, okay, that makes sense, right? But
right.
that's all I got of it. That's the only detail I remember. And then I did not read this until just now. And it's so beautiful. My gosh, it's so beautifully written. He had such a way of projecting the right image to describe the thoughts he was having about a subject. And the subject that he was writing about in fiction was the legal system,
right?
And how it destroys people, and how it destroys whole families and whole lives, and how it makes people cold and uncaring. And he did that so beautifully in just 3 pages. It's just astounding. He was very good. Yeah, and these people coded it.
They coded it.
They coded it, which would make the person who is managing the shipyards very happy. in Dickens's story.
Yep. No, I'm just reeling that they don't see the irony of what they did.
Are you
And
really though? Is it really that much of a surprise? They're a
well,
product of the same education
they're
system they were judging other people with.
yes. Yes.
They understood it slightly better, so they felt an outsized
Because they could
feeling of
code it better.
accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Legalism is navigating patterns says legalism is such, I dare say, which we have turned education into via the propositional tyranny. You know, it's all industry, and just want you guys to realize that oh, using Dickens to do it is so tone deaf. It's astonishing.
Dickens would write about people using Dickens to prove how dumb people were.
Yes. That's it.
That's the height of irony.
That's it. Dickens would use you as a proof of what you just did.
Dickens, oh gosh, somebody much more clever than me, please write a fictional story about, in the style of Dickens, about the state of academia and secondary education in this country. Please do it.
Hey, they can redeem, the professors who did this study can redeem themselves by doing that. How's that?
I don't think they have the talent.
They
I don't know them, but based upon this, I don't think they have the talent. Maybe they've grown in 10 years. That's possible. Everybody grows, you know?
Yes. Well, if anyone from the study group of the people that coded you is watching, you could read. This was an unfair test, and
it was unfair. Yes. We got so much extra information from our professors when we were studying these things that helped us understand it and helped us see the beauty of it. It was really beautifully written.
Right.
It was.
Let's code the beauty next time.
Count
the metaphors. Right. Yes, code for the the anaphoras and the alliteration and the mark for how many of the figures.
There's so much of it in there too.
Figures of speech you can unpack. Anyway, yeah. So that was. Mel says, I did poorly on my reading comprehension. However, I was the only one who knew that Nick Carraway from The Great Gatsby was gay. Well, there you go.
He was?
and I will say, the thing is, having mega bragged so that I could, stand on my high horse, sit on my high horse and judge you guys. I established I was a great student, right? I knew I could read, and I got an F on a paper on Huckleberry Finn because I got a straight up F in junior English.
How is that possible?
Well, okay, so the exercise, this was very interesting. It's like it certainly taught me how to read. We had a choice of different passages, and the one I took was reading when Huck. They go to there's a shack, right, on that the Duke and the something else, and they're describing the shack, and I went back and looked at it. I've written a blog post about this, and they have there's a oilcloth tablecloth that has a picture of an eagle on it or something, and in Huck's description of things from Huck's perspective, this is all finely decorated and stuff. And so I took him literally.
Oh, because he didn't know because he grew up poor.
You're supposed to, well, I don't know, maybe I was reading this in Amarillo and in the 80s.
Yeah.
Right. That I thought he meant it was actually, you were meant to think it's a really nice tablecloth. No, it's oil. And I think I looked it up and some people reading Huckleberry Finn figured out what issue of particular print tablecloth this thing was.
Oh, that's cool.
But the whole point of it is that Huck, in it, the Duke and his whoever the other person is in the scene, they're pretending to be nobility, right? But they're not. They're they're the hillbillies who are in their
and Huck wouldn't know.
And
he grew up in a terrible situation,
right? And so I kind of missed the point of reading that scene, and I took it straight, and I got flat out F.
I thought I was the literal one. I'm very little.
Right? See? But I mean, getting that F then taught me, read for frame, right? Read
Mm-hmm.
for the perspective of the narrator and
Right.
things like
What's the
that.
subcontext here?
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, everybody in academia read for frame. Because maybe you're missing the perspective that you're supposed to be taking on what's going on in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, is everybody properly shamed?
Properly shamed. I have no shame.
Everybody better be properly shamed. Let me see. Let's see.
I do understand before you read those, but I do understand now when we were at BaseCon and I was speaking to some people about AI and they said, you won't be able to tell the difference between an AI written story and a human written story. I said, absolutely will. No, no, I'm telling you, you won't. I said, no, it's got no soul. You can tell when something's been written by a human being and when something hasn't.
Yeah.
And he was insistent, this young man who was so insistent, but now I understand why. It's because he wasn't taught how to read like this. He's not picking this stuff up when he is reading,
Oh.
I'm guessing.
Well, we should. I mean, so to be continued in our exercise, if whether people can read. Um, we the it took me doing this exercise with this study to realize, indeed, the reason that people are satisfied with the AI summaries, the Grok summaries, is that's what they've been trained to think reading means.
Right, right.
Clearly,
Give me the basic meaning of this
give me
text.
the gist of this text, and
Give
that's
me
what
the
the AIs are
facts.
doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And no sense of the, I mean, what we've been trying to practice with the poetry, the layering, and the meaning. And of course, when we've tried with Grok, which is a pretty good search engine and summary generator,
Mm-hmm.
it's flat when you ask it to do this kind of layered.
Yes. And it gets worse the more it tries to redo it.
Right.
That was really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's just Mel and navigating patterns listening to us. Well, thank you all for joining us, and
Thank
everybody,
you.
like, subscribe, get us out there, tell everybody that in fact learning to read is both practical in ways that people are not acknowledging and way harder than everybody thinks.
Yeah.
And if you think you can read, come hang out with me.
She's got a list.
And I have grandmothers who know how to do this, right?
Yeah.
Good night, everyone. Read some Dickens.